The Generals of the Yang Family, Chapter 31.
You know, when you think about the absolute ultimate workplace betrayal, your mind probably goes to something fairly relatable.
Right, like standard office politics.
Exactly. Maybe a boss stealing the credit for this massive presentation you put together over like 6 weekends.
Oh, yeah. Or getting blatantly passed over for a promotion you clearly deserved, and the job goes to the CEO's nephew.
Right. And you pack up your desk, you walk out to the parking lot, and there is that dark, vindictive part of your brain that thinks, well, I genuinely hope this place burns to the ground without me.
It is an incredibly human impulse. I mean, you want the architecture of the organization to fail just to prove that you were the load-bearing pillar they took for granted.
Yeah, but I want you, the listener, to imagine taking that scenario and multiplying the stakes by about 1 million.
At least 1 million.
What if you were fired? And by fired, I mean the CEO literally tried to have you publicly executed based on nothing but petty office slander.
Which is a slight escalation from losing a promotion.
Just a bit. So you manage to escape. You fake your death. And then just a few months later, the company isn't just bankrupt. The CEO is physically trapped in the boardroom by a hostile takeover force. He is starving, completely cut off from the outside world, to the point where the executive suite is literally slaughtering and eating the office guard dogs just to survive the winter.
Wow.
And the only person on the entire planet who has the logistical power, the skills, and the network to save him is you.
Which creates a profound philosophical paradox, really. Do you rescue the architect of your own destruction, or do you just let the consequences of their paranoia play out?
That is exactly the impossible scenario facing the hero of today.
Yeah.
We are immersing ourselves in Chapter 31 of the classic Chinese military epic, The Generals of the Yang Family.
Such an incredible text.
It really is. And let me tell you, you do not need to be a military historian to feel the absolute tension in these pages. We are looking at a deeply wronged hero, Yang Liulang.
Right, the sixth son.
Yes, the 6th son of the legendary, historically revered Yang family. And he was unjustly condemned to death by his own ruler, Emperor Zhenzong. Liulang survived only through a secret intervention, and he has been hiding out in the remote Taihang Mountains.
To fully grasp the gravity of this situation, you really have to understand the geopolitical realities surrounding this emperor.
Set the stage for us.
So Emperor Zhenzong rules the Song dynasty. This is a massive, wealthy, agrarian empire, but they are locked in an existential, grinding conflict with the Liao dynasty to the north.
And the Liao are not to be messed with.
Not at all. They are not merely an annoyance. They are a terrifying, highly mobilized, nomadic military machine. And right now, the Liao army has completely surrounded the Song emperor in the besieged city of Waifu.
It sounds bleak.
It's horrific. The mud is deep, the starvation is setting in, the imperial court is slaughtering their own cavalry horses for meat. I mean, the center of the world for the Song people is on the brink of total collapse.
This text is ostensibly a brilliant piece of historical fiction, a romance of war. But our mission today is to look at the mechanics underneath the drama.
Exactly, the gears turning behind the scenes.
Right. We're going to explore how this story operates as a masterclass in crisis leadership, the complex, sometimes infuriating psychology of loyalty, and the eternal friction between brilliant military strategy and just, well, exhausted political reality.
It's a fascinating dynamic.
So I want to start by unpacking a scene that happens right before the grand rescue operation even begins, because it sets the baseline for everything. Liulang and his fiercely loyal right-hand man, Meng Liang, are currently laying low at the sprawling estate of a wealthy benefactor named Chen Elder.
This is their safe harbor. I mean, they are ghosts, essentially dead to the state, existing entirely outside the suffocating rules of the imperial court.
And while they are there, Chen Elder introduces them to a woman named Lady Hundred Flowers. The text describes her as wearing pale makeup, carrying herself with incredible dignity. Now, one of Liulang's vanguard generals, a rough-around-the-edges guy named Zhao Zan, sees an opportunity for some levity.
He's the comedic relief, in a way.
He is. He looks at Meng Liang and cracks a joke. He essentially says, man, you really missed out. If we had just arrived 1 day later, you could have had a night of romance with her.
And, in a standard band of outlaws or mercenaries, that joke lands. It breaks the tension.
Sure, it's a barracks joke.
Right. But Meng Liang's reaction tells you everything you need to know about the internal culture of the Yang army.
He utterly shuts it down. It's not even a polite chuckle. Meng Liang sternly rebukes Zhao Zan right in front of the entire room, saying, the commander is here. "Cease this inappropriate nonsense."
Wow.
The bystanders kind of cover their mouths to hide their laughter, but Meng Liang is dead serious. And then, moments later, as they're packing up to leave the estate, Chen the Elder tries to give Liulang a parting gift. He offers him 10 taels of silver.
Let's pause on that amount, actually. In the context of the Song Dynasty economy, 10 taels of silver is not pocket change.
It's not just cab fare.
No, not at all. A single tael of silver was roughly equivalent to 1,000 copper coins. For an average peasant or a common foot soldier, 10 taels could represent, perhaps even a year of living expenses.
That's massive.
It is a substantial, highly practical travel fund for a man hiding from the government.
Right. If I am on the run from the state and a billionaire offers me a duffel bag of cash for the road, I am taking the bag.
You'd be crazy not to.
But Liulang politely, yet with absolute finality, refuses to take a single coin. He walks away with nothing but his armor and his men. So why include these two very specific, seemingly minor interactions right before a massive war sequence? The rejection of a harmless romantic joke and the refusal of vital travel funds.
Because the author is establishing the operational baseline of the Yang family forces. Think about what happens to military units when the central authority collapses or disavows them.
They usually go rogue.
They fracture, they become bandits, they pillage. By showing Meng Liang enforcing draconian behavioral standards over a simple joke, and Liulang refusing independent wealth, the text is demonstrating that their discipline does not come from the emperor's laws.
Oh, that's interesting.
Their discipline is internal. They have been stripped of their titles, their income, and their legal right to exist, yet they remain perfectly uncorrupted.
They are essentially holding on to their military professionalism as a lifeline. If they lose that, they just become heavily armed criminals.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the moment they arrive back at their hidden fortress in the Taihang Mountains. Because the temptation to become something else is brought right to Liulang's doorstep.
Yeah, this is a pivotal moment.
One of his absolute top commanders, a warrior named Yu Sheng, pulls him aside and pitches a radical yet incredibly logical idea.
Yu Sheng is the voice of pure, unadulterated pragmatism here.
And I am going to defend Yu Sheng here, because what he says makes perfect sense to me. He says to Liulang, look at the facts. The emperor listened to slander. He prioritized petty court politics over the survival of the state, and he ordered your execution.
He's not wrong.
Right. He says, heaven opened its eyes and allowed you to survive. So why on earth are we going forward with this suicidal mission to save him? Let's just stay right here in the Taihang Mountains. We have troops, we have defensible terrain, we can be our own kings, we can live comfortably, and we could just let Emperor Zhenzong deal with the horrific consequences of his own terrible management.
It is the ultimate assertion of individual justice. From a modern, individualistic perspective, Yu Sheng's argument is flawless. Why owe a debt to a system that tried to consume you?
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. If we go back to our opening analogy, you don't go back into the burning building to save the CEO who just fired you and tried to ruin your career.
Yeah.
You sit across the street, you buy a coffee, and you watch it burn. Honestly, isn't Yu Sheng making complete logical sense here? Why risk your life for an ungrateful boss? Why does Liulang vehemently reject this completely rational proposal?
Because you are applying a 21st century framework of individual rights to an 11th century framework of cosmic duty.
Ah, okay.
To understand Liulang's rejection, we have to strip away our modern bias and look at the immense weight of Confucian loyalty and the terrifying permanence of the historical record in Chinese culture.
Historical record, right?
Yeah. Liulang doesn't argue that the emperor is a good person. He doesn't argue that the emperor deserves to be saved. He bypasses the individual entirely.
His response is fascinating.
Yeah.
He tells Yu Sheng that if they stay in the mountains, yes, they might live out their days in comfort, but the moment they die, they will go down in the imperial histories as mere bandits. They will leave a curse on the Yang family name for 10,000 generations.
10,000 generations. That is the timeline Liulang is operating on.
It's hard to even fathom that kind of pressure.
It is. In this cultural paradigm, your physical life is temporary, but your ancestral reputation is immortal. The emperor is just a man occupying a role. But the throne represents the stability of the universe, the mandate of heaven.
So it's bigger than the man.
Way bigger. If Liulang abandons the throne to the Liao invaders, he is not pashing a bad boss. He is allowing the social order to collapse. Huh. He is choosing a brutal, highly dangerous duty over a comfortable life because he is terrified of how scholars 1,000 years in the future will judge his father's name.
It is a staggering burden to carry. I mean, he is literally subjugating his own instinct for survival and revenge to protect an abstract concept of legacy.
Absolutely.
So the decision is made. They're going to march into the teeth of the Liao army and save the man who wanted them dead. But deciding to fight is one thing. Actually mobilizing an army when you're officially a ghost is another.
This is where the logistics of the narrative become deeply compelling.
Oh, I was blown away by this part. Liulang sends messengers out from the mountain fortress, slipping through the shadows, to summon his scattered commanders. Men with names like Liu Chao, Zhang Gai, Chen Lin, and Chai Gan.
These are the loyalists.
Right, these are generals who fled into the wilderness, changing their names and hiding in villages or deep forests when Liulang was originally purged from the military.
They just melted into the landscape. The state's military apparatus lost them entirely.
But the moment the whisper goes out that Liulang is alive and calling for them, this massive, dormant network reactivates. And I'm not talking about gathering a few hundred guys for a guerrilla raid. Within a matter of days, they assemble a force of 22 elite commanders and over 80,000 troops.
It's an incredible mobilization.
80,000. I have to ask you about the mechanics of this. How does an exiled fugitive coordinate the assembly of an 80,000-strong army without the modern advantages of radio, digital communication, or even official government supply lines?
Well, it requires an alternative infrastructure of loyalty. The state uses payroll, official seals, and the threat of execution to hold an army together.
Right, standard bureaucracy.
Exactly. But Liulang is utilizing oath-bound networks. In medieval military structures, soldiers often felt more loyalty to their direct commander who bled with them than to a distant bureaucrat in a palace.
That makes a lot of sense.
When Liulang was purged, those troops didn't suddenly become loyal to the new guy the emperor appointed. They just quietly took their weapons and went home, and they waited.
So the messengers aren't out there giving recruitment speeches. They are just triggering a pre-existing activation code.
Precisely. They are likely using old smuggler routes, martial arts networks, and familial connections to pass the word. And, the logistics of feeding 80,000 men on the march without imperial granaries means they are relying on sympathetic local populations and the hidden caches they prepared years in advance. It proves a terrifying reality for any ruling monarch. True authority does not reside in the royal seal. It resides in the man whom the men with swords actually choose to follow.
And Liulang doesn't just gather his own men. He coordinates a massive, multi-pronged strategic movement. He manages to get messages into the capital, beyond Qing, to coordinate with the 8th Prince, who is one of the few royals sympathetic to the Yang family.
The 8th Prince is a crucial ally here.
He also sends word to Yang Kaibao at the Yangjia Ferry. He is setting up a synchronized convergence on the besieged city from 3 different directions.
He is treating the entire theater of war as a single chessboard.
But the detail that absolutely blew my mind, the thing I cannot stop thinking about, is the banner.
Oh, the banner, yes.
When Liulang finally marches this massive army out of the mountains, he doesn't do it quietly. He raises a towering, massive central flag, and painted on it in giant characters are 7 words. Yang Liulang rescues the emperor at Waifu.
What's fascinating here is that banner is arguably the most devastating weapon deployed in the entire campaign.
Initially, I thought of it like a massive billboard in the middle of a war zone, just a big advertisement. But it's so much more aggressive than that. It feels almost like a modern psychological warfare tactic, like hacking a billboard.
A cyber warfare tactic is the perfect analogy, actually. Let's explore how that mechanism works. If you hack into an enemy's internal communications and spoof a message saying their systems are failing, you create panic before you even launch a physical attack.
Right.
That banner is a systemic virus introduced into the visual field of the battlefield.
Because in medieval warfare, visibility is everything. You don't have satellite imagery, you look at the horizon and you read the flags to know what reality you are operating in.
Exactly. When the Song Dynasty troops, who are battered, starving, and entirely demoralized, look out from the walls of Waifu and see that banner, their psychological state instantly flips from despair to fanaticism.
Their ghost hero is back.
Right. Their greatest supposedly dead champion has miraculously returned. But the effect on the Liao army is even more profound. The Liao commanders know they have the Song forces beaten. They are just waiting for them to starve.
It's just a waiting game for them.
Yeah, And then suddenly a massive army appears on their flank, openly declaring that the ghost of their most feared enemy is leading them.
It just completely hacks their decision-making cycle.
It shatters their Oda loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. Before the Liao commanders can even verify if it's really Yang Liulang or just a psychological trick, the panic begins to spread through their ranks. The banner shifts the entire momentum of the war before a single sword is swung.
That is just brilliant. So the psychological trap is set. They are marching in the heat of summer. The south winds are blowing dust across the plains. Liulang's forces merge with Yang Taibao's troops, and eventually they rendezvous with the 8th Prince, who has brought an additional 40,000 troops from the capital to a staging ground called Chenzhou.
Now the pieces are in place.
And this is where Liulang lays out his actual ambition. He sits down with the 8th Prince and says, listen, we aren't just here to punch a hole in the siege lines and pull the emperor out. We're going to completely wipe out the Liao army and pacify the entire Yuzhou region in one fell swoop.
He isn't looking at a simple rescue mission. He is looking at a war-ending maneuver. He wants to solve the geopolitical problem permanently.
Right. But then his very first tactical move on the field seems deeply counterintuitive to me.
How so?
Well, he has this massive, freshly combined army. He has absolute numerical strength. But instead of marching them all forward in a massive phalanx to crush the Liao lines, he takes Yu Sheng, his absolute best, most ferocious commander, and sends him out completely alone as the vanguard with a relatively small force. He gives Yu Sheng a very specific, strange order. Go out there and frustrate the enemy's sharp spirit. I have to ask you, why risk your top guy in a seemingly small vanguard skirmish before the main army arrives? If Yu Sheng gets surrounded and killed, your entire momentum collapses.
It looks risky, but it is a fundamental piece of military doctrine when you are relying on psychological warfare. You have to understand the transition from rumor to reality.
Okay.
The Liao army has seen the massive banner. They have heard the whispers that the ghost of Yang Liulang is marching on them. But armies can rationalize rumors. A Liao commander could easily tell his men, it's a trick. It's just a desperate militia holding a fake flag. Hold your ground.
So the vanguard isn't there to win the battle, per se.
No, the vanguard is a proof of concept. Its primary function is not the body count, it is undeniable validation. By sending out your most terrifying, highly capable shock cavalry commander to violently and visibly shatter the Liao forward formations, you provide physical proof that the elite Yang forces have returned.
It makes it real.
Exactly. When Yu Sheng tears through their lines, the Liao soldiers realize the nightmare is real. You are weaponizing the terror that the banner initiated.
And Yu Sheng absolutely delivers on that objective. He crashes into the Liao formation like a wrecking ball, shatters their lines, and personally defeats a Liao general named Lu He. But here's the craziest part of this vanguard strike.
The prisoner card.
Yes. During the chaos of breaking those forward lines, the Song forces capture a Liao prisoner card. They drag it back to the staging area, crack it open, and sitting inside is Huiyanzan.
The emperor's personal escort general.
Yes. Huiyanzan had apparently tried to sneak out of the siege city of Weifu to get word to the outside world, and he was captured by the Liao. And when Liulang frees him, Huiyanzan looks at him and says, if heaven hadn't arranged this feeding, I would have been a captive forever.
It's an amazing moment.
You cannot ignore the incredible cinematic irony of this scene. I want you, the listener, to picture this contrast. Inside the great opulent walls of Weifu, the emperor and his high ministers, the men who claim the divine right to rule the earth, are sitting in the mud, completely paralyzed, eating their own starving horses.
It's a pathetic state.
And meanwhile, outside the walls, the supposedly disgraced rebels, the men cast out of civilized society, are arriving in glorious, perfectly organized formation. And they're literally liberating the emperor's top general from a wooden cage.
It is a brilliant narrative convergence and a complete inversion of the traditional power dynamic. The author is showing us that true legitimacy and strength have temporarily vacated the throne room.
Right, the palace is impotent.
Exactly. The functioning arm of the state has withered under the emperor's paranoia, and it is only being restored by the exiled general operating outside the law. Rescuing Huiyanzan isn't just saving an old colleague. Symbolically, Liulang is reclaiming the paralyzed military apparatus of the Song dynasty.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the grand clash. The supreme commander of the Liao army, Xiao Tianzuo, receives the terrifying reports. The vanguard strike was devastating. The Yang banner is real. Huiyanzan has been freed.
The reality is setting in.
And the text makes a point to note that Xiao Tianzuo is deeply terrified. He scrambles to organize his camps, desperately trying to form a defensive line. But before he can finalize his deployment, the Song vanguard is pouring over the hills. The text describes them covering the earth like a massive flood.
This is where the sheer architectural brilliance of Liulang's approach to battle is put on full display.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When you read the breakdown of this battle, it is staggering. It does not read like a chaotic medieval brawl where two mobs just smash into each other until one side runs away.
No, not at all.
It reads like the mechanics of a perfectly calibrated machine, like a perfectly executed play in American football or a multi-pronged flank in a strategy video game. Everyone has a specific lane.
Let's break down that machine. How does Liulang deploy his forces?
He assigns Meng Liang and Zhao Zan to command 20,000 troops each. They are taking the extreme left and right wings. Their explicit orders are not just to skirmish on the edges, but to drive deep, cutting diagonally into the enemy's center. Meanwhile, Liulang himself and the 8th Prince command the massive rear guard, acting as the anchor and the ultimate wave of crushing forward pressure.
And you have to remember, the coordination required to execute that without radio communication is immense. It relies on a complex system of drum beats, gongs, and directional flags to ensure that the wings advance at the exact right pace to prevent the center from escaping.
And the individual moments of combat within this machine are breathtaking. You have Yu Sheng, still in the vanguard, who engages the Liao general Yelu King and outright kills him, just cleaving him down.
Brutal.
You have Zhao Zan on the wing, fighting like an absolute madman, and he slays the General Liu Kei in a single violent clash of horses. But my absolute favorite tactical moment involves a Liao general named Malilahu.
The capture of Malilahu is perhaps the most illustrative moment of the entire battle.
Malilahu is a fierce fighter, and he tries to engage Meng Liang head-on, looking for a heroic duel. But Liulang's army doesn't care about heroic duels.
They don't have time for ego.
Right. While Malilahu is focused on Meng Liang, two of Liulang's other commanders, Chen Lin and Shagan, flank him with crack troops. They squeeze him from the sides. Malilahu panics, abandons the duel, and tries to break out of the encirclement to flee.
He realizes he's in trouble.
And as his horse is sprinting away, two more commanders, Lu Chao and Zhang Gai, use horse ropes to literally trip his mount, sending him crashing into the dirt, and they capture him alive.
Yeah.
I need you to explain the mechanics of this because it sounds like a perfectly executed trap.
It is a textbook example of medieval combined arms and unit cohesion. A horse rope in this context is likely a form of a bola or a tripwire strung between two fast-moving cavalry units designed to take out the legs of a fleeing mount.
Okay.
But look at the sequence. He is engaged in the front, compressed from the sides, and trapped from the rear. That specific detail illustrates that this victory is not achieved because Meng Liang is simply a stronger guy with a bigger sword.
Right, it's not just a superhero movie.
The victory is achieved through overlapping fields of attack. They are fighting as an integrated, inescapable net. The Liao general expects a one-on-one fight, and instead, he runs into a systemic meat grinder.
It is a perfectly calibrated machine of war. And the head of the Liao snake, Commander Zhao Qianzhou, realizes that his entire structural integrity is collapsing around him. He fights desperately to rally his men, but the Song general Yang Taibao spots him, draws his bow, and shoots Zhao Tianzhu right off his horse.
A critical hit.
He takes an arrow, hits the ground, and has to be frantically scooped up and rescued by a subordinate general, Tu Jingxiu.
And you have to consider the psychology of an army watching their supreme commander fall.
I imagine it's just catastrophic.
It is the moment an army ceases to be an army and becomes a panicked mob. The banner falls, the commander disappears under a crush of horses, and the panic becomes a contagion. The structural integrity disintegrates instantly.
And just to seal the deal, to make it an absolute devastating rout, the Song generals who'd been trapped inside the besieged city of Waifu are watching all of this from the watchtowers. They see Zhao Tianzhu fall, they see the Liao line shattering.
Yeah, but perfect opportunity.
So they throw open the heavy city gates and charge out into the mud, catching the retreating Liao forces in a massive crushing pincer movement.
Which is just devastating.
The text uses incredibly visceral language here. It says the Liao enemy fled like fallen leaves swept by a brutal wind, leaving bodies piled high like mountains and blood literally flowing in the irrigation canals. It is a total textbook victory. The Song army even manages to capture all of the Liao's livestock and siege supplies.
It is the absolute pinnacle of strategic execution. But what elevates this chapter from a mere action sequence to a treatise on military doctrine is what the author does next.
I love this part so much. Because the narrative literally pauses, the story stops, and the author suddenly transforms into a modern sports commentator, standing by a digital screen, breaking down the post-game stats for the audience.
It's a fascinating structural choice.
The text explicitly outlines what it calls the 3 pillars of victory. Let me read them exactly as they are presented. Pillar 1, the Liao forces had been besieging the city for a long, grueling period, leading to severe physical and mental fatigue. Their willpower had become lax.
Okay.
Pillar 2, the unexpected, shocking revelation that Yang Liulang was still alive shattered their psychological state before the fighting even began. And Pillar 3, the Song Army, arrived fresh, filled with sharp, fanatical morale, and struck while the enemy was in a state of disorganized unpreparedness.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, those 3 pillars are direct echoes of the most fundamental tenets of classical military strategy, specifically Sun Tzu's The Art of War.
Really? How so?
You always seek to strike the tired with the fresh. You attack the enemy's mind long before you attack their fortifications. You utilize deception and overwhelming surprise to break their organizational rhythm. It shows the text is deeply rooted in actual strategic theory, not just dramatic storytelling.
I want to push back on you here, though. Let's debate these pillars. If I'm looking at this from a purely mechanical standpoint, which of these 3 factors is actually the most devastating?
Okay, let's hear it.
Because you could easily argue that Pillar 1, physical fatigue from sitting in a siege camp for months, is just a standard reality of medieval war. Everybody gets tired, everybody gets hungry.
That's true.
But Pillar 2, that psychological ghost factor, the sheer paralyzing terror of realizing a dead legend is marching toward you with 80,000 men. Does that do more structural damage to an army than the physical exhaustion?
Let's challenge the assumption that physical fatigue is the primary killer. Physical fatigue certainly slows the body. It makes your sword arm heavy and your reaction time sluggish.
Right.
But psychological shock does something far worse. It completely paralyzes the decision-making cycle at the command level. When Xiao Tianzuo learned that the Yang banner was real, the text specifically noted his terror and his inability to organize his camps in time.
He literally just froze.
He froze. And because he froze, his men didn't know where to stand. The psychological shock created the exact window of operational unpreparedness that allowed the fresh Song troops to obliterate them.
Ah, I see.
So while the physical fatigue created the underlying vulnerability, the psychological warfare was the explosive catalyst for the collapse. The author is meticulously demonstrating that wars are won or lost in the mind long before the physical bodies clash on the battlefield.
So against all odds, Liulang and his army have achieved the perfect victory. The field is theirs. The 8th prince, who coordinated the rear guard, rides alone through the open gates into the city of Waifu.
The victorious return.
He finds Emperor Zhenzong, who is probably still in shock, and tells him, "Good news, Yang Liulang isn't dead, he is very much alive, and he just saved your empire."
Which has to be a complicated moment for the emperor.
Oh, absolutely. The emperor immediately summons Liulang into the makeshift court. He officially pardons him for all his past crimes, which, let's continually remind ourselves, were entirely fabricated by corrupt politicians in the first place. And the emperor promises him lavish rewards.
And this moment, right here, is where the soaring momentum of the military narrative violently crashes into a massive, immovable political wall.
Liulang stands before the emperor, fresh from the battlefield, and he makes his pitch. He says, "Your Majesty, we have an unprecedented, miraculous opportunity right in front of us. You are here in person, which means the morale of our troops is absolutely sky high."
They have the ultimate mandate.
Exactly. He says the Liao army is completely shattered. They're running for their lives. Let's not stop. Let's not rest. Give the order and we will march straight north to Yuzhou. We will capture Empress Xiao's strategic maps. We will take their territory and we will permanently end the northern border threat forever. This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to finish a generational war.
And from a purely military and strategic perspective, Liulang is completely correct. It is a fundamental rule of warfare. You never, ever let a shattered enemy retreat and regroup.
You press the advantage.
You press the advantage ruthlessly until the structural threat is entirely eliminated. You don't fight for a draw when you can fight for a checkmate.
So Liulang lays out the checkmate. And what does the emperor say? The emperor declines. He just says no.
Unbelievable.
His exact reasoning, as presented in the text, is essentially the royal entourage has been out of the capital for far too long. Everyone is exhausted. My ministers are tired. We need to go home to Bianjing, get some rest, and we can discuss further military action later in the comfort of the court.
It's a devastating letdown.
I have to tell you, reading this scene, I felt an intense, burning frustration on Liulang's behalf. I want you, the listener, to think about the last time you poured your absolute heart and soul into a massive crisis at work.
Yeah, we've all been there.
You pulled the all-nighter, you salvaged the account, you saved the company from ruin, and you present your boss with a brilliant, aggressive plan to double the revenue and crush the competitor. And your boss, who was just panicked about losing their job yesterday, looks at you and says, "Let's just be glad we survived. I'm taking the rest of the week off."
It kills morale completely.
You just dragged an 80,000-man ghost army out of the shadows. You just saved this guy from eating his own horse in the mud. You have the momentum to win the war forever, and the boss says, "Nah, I'm tired. Let's go home."
This raises an important question about leadership. It is deeply, intensely frustrating to read, but we have to acknowledge that it is also brutally, historically realistic. This exchange exposes the profound, unbridgeable chasm between how a military commander views the world and how a political leader views the world.
Let's dig into that chasm.
Yeah.
Because to me, it just looks like cowardice.
It looks like cowardice, but it is actually trauma and a different set of priorities. We have to look at the psychology of the emperor. Emperor Zhenzong is not a frontline commander. He is a politician who represents the perceived stability of the entire state.
Right.
He has just survived a deeply traumatizing, horrific siege. He's been starving, freezing in the mud, surrounded by the imminent threat of capture, humiliation, or brutal execution. His nervous system is completely, utterly fried.
He's experiencing shell shock, essentially.
Absolutely. To Liulang, the routing of the Liao army is a door swinging wide open to a glorious future. To the emperor, the routing of the Liao army is merely an exit sign from a living nightmare.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
His trauma, his overwhelming desire for the physical safety of his palace, and his inherent distrust of prolonged military campaigns completely override the strategic opportunity. The military mind sees what can be gained. The political mind focuses obsessively on what has just been saved.
So what does Liulang do with that staggering rejection? He doesn't scream. He doesn't argue with the emperor. He quietly bows and withdraws to his own camp. And then he does something very dark. He takes all the high-ranking Liao generals that his men captured in that brilliant, sophisticated tactical battle, and he executes them. All of them.
A decisive act.
He chops off their heads, puts them on display, and then he orders his massive army to pack up their gear and march back to the capital, Bianjing. I want your take on this. Was that mass execution a subtle act of venting? Was Liulang essentially taking out his overwhelming frustration over the emperor's refusal on these prisoners of war?
I believe it was exactly that, but it is also a grim, highly calculated strategic compromise. It is a silent protest. Liulang was just denied the ultimate strategic victory of taking Yuzhou. He knows that by letting the Liao army escape, the Song dynasty will have to fight them again in 5, 10, or 20 years. So he settles for a brutal tactical finality right now. By executing the command structure of the Liao army, he is ensuring that at least these specific enemy commanders will never be able to threaten the border again.
It's his way of saying, if you won't let me end the war, I am at least going to make sure the enemy bleeds as much as possible today.
Precisely. And this moment perfectly, tragically encapsulates the overarching theme of the Yang family in classical Chinese literature.
Which is what?
The Yang family possesses brilliant, generational, almost superhuman military minds. But their tragedy is that they are constantly, inevitably handcuffed by timid, exhausted, or politically paranoid leadership. They are lions led by men who are terrified of the dark.
Man, that is beautifully said. So the Grand Army marches all the way back to the capital of Bianjing. The emperor is finally safe behind his massive palace walls, eating proper food again, and he holds a formal ceremony to reward Liulang.
The political theater resumes.
Right. He officially appoints Yang Liulang as the military governor of the Three Passes, the Sanguan, which is the absolute bleeding edge of the northern frontier.
Yeah.
And the emperor grants him a very special imperial edict, the legal power to execute anyone in his command without needing prior approval from the capital.
Which is a staggering amount of unilateral power to hand to a general, especially considering this is the same emperor who had recently ordered Liulang's execution based on rumors of treason.
Right. Why the sudden trust?
Well, it isn't necessarily trust, it is desperate dependency. The state has peered over the edge of the abyss at Waifu. They recognize, finally, that their complex bureaucracy cannot survive unless Yang Liulang is standing at the border holding the shield.
They need a monster to fight the monsters.
Exactly. They are giving him the power of life and death because they need him to be the monster that keeps the other monsters at bay.
So before Liulang heads out to this grueling new post at the Three Passes, he makes one final stop. He visits his family home, the Weaningfu, in the capital. He goes to bid farewell to the matriarch of the family, Shi Taijun, who is also known as Lingpo.
A very significant figure.
And while he is there, this incredibly poignant, heartbreaking scene unfolds. His son, Yang Zongbao, who's only 13 years old, runs up to his father. Zongbao begs to go with him to the front line. He wants to pack his bags, grab a sword, and join the fight alongside the legendary generals he has heard so much about.
It is the eternal enthusiasm of youth. A 13-year-old boy sees the shiny armor, hears the tales of the great victory at Waifu, and is completely, innocently ignorant of the true, horrific cost of the war.
And Liulang's reaction is so telling. He looks down at his 13-year-old boy, and he flatly refuses.
Yeah.
He doesn't romanticize it. He tells Zongbao, "The border is a place of bitter cold and immense hardship. There is no glory or benefit for you there right now. Stay here in the capital, serve your grandmother, and wait until you come of age." And with that, Liulang turns his back on his family, turns his back on the warmth and comfort of the capital, gathers Yu Sheng, Meng Ling, and his battle-hardened generals, and marches right back out into the frozen, desolate frontier to rebuild the fortifications and wait for the inevitable next attack.